All right, we are going to start lesson 3.1. So what we've been doing up until this point in geometry is we've been sketching and drawing. And today we are going to introduce a new technique called construction. So sketching and drawing are a little bit different because sketching is rough. We don't use any tools, so we don't use typically a straight edge or a protractor. We do include markings. So again, let's say I was going to sketch a right isosceles triangle. I would just kind of draw it like this. It's a right triangle. These two segments look like they're mostly congruent, and then I would mark them. But drawing is more accurate. We do use a protractor and a straight edge. And it's just more precise. So if I was going to draw an isosceles right triangle, I would probably use a protractor. I just don't have one right now, so I'm going to use my straight edge that is a right angle, and I'm going to 2 centimeters, and then I'm going to make sure that's 2 centimeters. And then I would draw my hypotenuse. And as we can see, that's just a lot more accurate, a lot more precise. So what happens when we do something by construction? That's when we use a compass and a straight edge. Oh, sometimes we use a ruler. We can also use patty paper. And patty paper is exactly what it says. It is an actual piece of paper that is slipped in between hamburger patties. It sort of has a waxy consistency, keeps them from sticking together. We use it because it's essentially tracing paper and it's in a nice size square. We use patty paper to do some of our constructions, but some of them are easier when we use patty paper, and so that's why I'm also teaching you how to use a compass and a straight edge. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to duplicate angles and segments. So in video 1, we're just going to focus on duplicating segments, and I'll take you through some of the examples. Let's take a look at the steps for completing a construction for copying or duplicating a segment. So here is my segment AB. And I want to duplicate this down here. And there are 3 stages that we're going to do. So you can see stage 1, what's happening is I am drawing a ray and marking an endpoint. And so we're going to go ahead and take our straight edge. Again, I'm not going to measure this. That's not what a construction is. I'm going to draw a ray and mark an endpoint. Now, I don't usually put an arrow on my ray. I do always try to make sure it's longer than what I'm copying. Stage 2. This again represents our swoopy mark, and this is when we need our compass. And again, if you don't know how to open your compass or work on it or use it, I recommend that you watch my intro to constructions video. So my compass is already set up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the segment that I'm copying. I'm going to put my stylus on point A, one of the endpoints. It doesn't matter. I like to go to the right. And I'm going to open up so that my pencil hits point B. And I usually give it a little swoopy to see where I am. And if I need to adjust it and make it a little bit more accurate, I do. I like this a little better. I tighten it down. Because what I don't want to do is change the distance between my stylus and my pencil. That's what I'm going to use to copy. So once I've measured the distance using my compass, then stage 3 to get that final copy is to come down here, put my stylus on my endpoint of my new segment, swipe, and there we are. And I'm going to label this C and D. So there we go. We just constructed our first duplicated segment. So let's use a ruler to compare, and I would love you to do this as well. So this looks like it's about 2.5 centimeters or 25 millimeters. If I go down here, it looks like it's exactly the same. So that's really exciting. How did the 2 segments compare? They are congruent. How would we duplicate a segment using patty paper? Well, this is actually, again, this is why it's pretty easy. You would just trace it. I don't have any patty paper with me right now, but all I would do is I would lay my piece of patty paper on top of my segment, use my straight edge, trace over top of it with the straight edge. So now I want us to take a try at doing a couple segment duplications. We're going to go to the examples. So one of this says, draw a segment, then construct a segment that is 3 times your original. All right. So for my segment that I'm going to draw it over here. And again, draw. That's what I'm using, that word. I'm going to kind of put it in the middle, and I'm trying to think 3 times. 1, 2, that might be a little bit too long. And I'll mark my endpoints. So that's the segment that I'm going to duplicate, make it 3 times as long. So to do my duplication, I will put this over here. I will pick an endpoint and draw my ray. And because I'm doing 3 times this length, if I had a ruler, I could probably make it as long as I needed. And I like to mark my endpoint. So once again, start with our segment, draw a new ray, mark its endpoint, take your compass, put stylus on one end, pencil on the other, make some adjustments, do a test swoopy. I like that, that looks pretty good. Go ahead, lock it down. Now because I'm doing 3 times the length, right? I swoop once, pick up my stylus, put it at my new intersection point twice, and this is close, but I did it. Move it 1 more time, all right? So again, let's say this is AB, and say my new segment is CD. Then what I could say as our relationship is that 3 times AB, remember when I put my segment with no line over top of it, I'm referring to its length, equals the length of CD. So 3 times the length of AB is 3 times the length of CD. What we're going to do for our next one is we're going to actually construct an equilateral triangle. And this is actually a segment copying situation because an equilateral triangle has 3 congruent sides. If we were to kind of sketch this out, I want you to think about what would happen here. So I'm going to start with a segment, and I like to usually start with horizontal segments. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to put it in the bottom of this space so that when I go to construct my equilateral triangle, I have space above. Now, I don't want to take this and measure it and then try to get an accurate idea of what my equilateral triangle is. This is when a construction works. Remember that a compass copies distances. So if I take my stylus and my pencil and once again put it on this endpoint here, if I were to make a swoop, I am guaranteed that any point along this arc strike is this far away from this endpoint here. So if I was, again, going to make my equilateral triangle, if I put my straight edge up here and I made a segment, those 2 segments would be congruent. But the interesting thing is with an equilateral triangle, that happens from all 3 vertices essentially, but it would, one of the vertices I started with and the other one I still have. I just don't know where the 3rd vertex is. So I want you to think for a minute, maybe pause the video and see if you can ask yourself, what would I do to get my 3rd vertex that is also this far away from this point and this point, right? Well, maybe you have the answer, and if you don't, that is okay. Again, we are learning and growing with our techniques. So to get that 3rd vertex, what we do is, again, do not adjust your compass. Leave it at the same distance. This time put the stylus on this vertex and swoop again. Notice I didn't create such as large of an arc strike because I didn't need to. I knew that I wanted to intersect with this arc strike. I am guaranteed this point here is this far away from this vertex and from that vertex, And then I'm going to go ahead, take my straight edge. And one thing we want to remember as we're drawing and constructing is that we continue with our labeling. We really want to do good labeling in our diagrams, because when we read a diagram, we can only assume what we see in the picture. And what I mean by that is what is labeled and given to us. We can't just look at a diagram and be like, oh, it looks like those are congruent, or it looks like this is twice that, or something like that. We have to have it labeled that way. And so there we go. That is copying segments. And copying segments is one of the foundational techniques of construction. And so we will be doing a lot of that. If you just need more practice, go ahead and grab a blank piece of paper and just do what we did here in number 2, draw a segment and copy it, draw a segment, maybe copy twice its length. And you'll be on your way to, oops, sorry about that, good practice.